When it comes to airports, it's fair to say that bigger isn't always better. From icy runways made of compacted snow to perilous clifftop landings, we bring you some of the smallest and most exciting landing strips in the world. Juancho Irausquin Airport, Saba, Lesser Antilles, the Caribbean. Landing on this tiny airstrip, perched across a clifftop on this Dutch Caribbean island, is something of a white-knuckle ride. Pilots have just 1,312 feet to stop before they run the risk of plunging into the ocean below. Compare that to London Gatwick, which has 12,801 feet long runways. Pilots flying into Saba have to be specially trained to manage the nail-biting landing on what is the world's shortest commercial runway. You won't find any jumbo jets or air traffic control here either, only helicopters and turboprop airplanes are agile enough to make the grade. Passengers who travel to this tiny volcanic island rate it as one of the most incredible landings in the world for its panoramic views over the Caribbean Sea, as well as the jaw-dropping ending. This year, the runway is set to be resurfaced with concrete and widened, but it won't be made any longer and will still be flanked by the ocean on each end. Land's End Airport, Cornwall, England. This tiny Cornish airport has been sending passengers to and welcoming them from the Isles of Scilly since 1937. For the first 2 years, planes had to land on the golf course on the island of St. Mary's, until the Isles of Scilly's own airport opened in 1939. Today, it takes just 15 minutes to fly between Land's End and St. Mary's. With tiny planes, seating between 8 and 19 passengers, you'll get a fantastic view of the turquoise sea and pristine white beaches. For those with deeper pockets and a bigger taste for adventure, you can fly there by helicopter. Flights may be brief, but Land's End is big on creature comforts. A $1.3 million, £1 million, passenger terminal opened in 2013 with a wood burner to stave off the winter chill, a children's play area and a cafe serving all-day bacon sandwiches. Barra Airport, Outer Hebrides, Scotland. This stunning Hebridean island is known for its rugged landscapes and unspoiled coastline, but it's also famous for its unusual runway. Don't expect a manicured concrete landing strip. Instead you'll find yourself making a descent onto the sugar sands of Tramhara Beach. An average of 2 flights a day arrive on the shoreline from Glasgow, and it's said to be the only beach airport to operate scheduled flights. Planes work to a flexible timetable so they can accommodate the changing tides, which wash over the sands twice a day. It may be remote but around 10,000 passengers pass through Barra each year. The beach is also popular with cockle collectors who are warned to steer clear of the landing strips. As well as a terminal building with car hire and a cafe, Barra has its own fire crew, although they're more often called out to save stranded seals or dolphins than anything linked to the airport. Luang Prabang Airport, Laos. 20 years ago, traveling to Luang Prabang from nearby Thailand entailed a 2-day trip on a slow boat down the Mekong River, or a light aircraft flight to the town's landing strip. Now Luang Prabang, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, has overhauled its airport. It's still beautifully compact, but sees international flights from Thailand, Vietnam, Singapore and Cambodia. The new runway and passenger terminal opened in 2013, creating a surge in tourists traveling to this once sleepy town. Gone is the slightly dilapidated terminal from the 1960s, and in is a glassy modern building, complete with aircon, a cafe and shop. While the airport may be shiny and new, it's still charmingly small and the shops won't be enough to entertain you for long. Outside, you'll find a handful of tuk-tuk drivers waiting to take you on the 15-minute drive into the center of Luang Prabang. Moshashu International Airport, Lesotho. It may be tiny but Moshashu Airport offers direct international flights to and from Johannesburg, connecting the small landlocked nation with surrounding South Africa. It's named after Moshashu, who was king of Lesotho in the 1850s. The two runways also service domestic flights, ferrying passengers within the Kingdom of Lesotho. The country covers an area of just 11,720 square miles, but the forbidding mountain terrain means many of the more remote villages are only accessible by light aircraft. St. Helena Airport, St. Helena, British Overseas Territory. Sitting neatly between Africa and South America, this isolated outpost is the second most remote inhabited island on Earth. Until St. Helena's International Airport opened in October 2017, its only link to the rest of the world was via Royal Mail ship, which transported provisions and people to and from Cape Town every 3 weeks. The population of this British Overseas Territory has, until recently, survived on $69 million, £53 million, in annual aid from the UK government. It's hoped the modest airport will encourage tourism and make the island more self-sufficient. With 502 species of unique wildlife and a huge whale shark population, there's plenty to attract adventurous travelers. As well as twice-weekly flights to Johannesburg, the newly built airport has everything you'd expect, such as cafes and shops. But if you want to visit, you'd better hurry up. Summer season flights, December-April, get fully booked up to 6 months in advance. Tenzing Hillary Airport, Lukla, Nepal. Thanks to its proximity to Everest Base Camp, tiny Tenzing Hillary Airport is Nepal's busiest domestic terminal. But landing here is heart-stopping stuff. It's dubbed the world's most dangerous airport for its perilous clifftop runway, which is perched near a fearsome 9,200-foot drop. The airport is named after the first men to reach Everest's summit, Sir Edmund Hillary and Sherpa Tenzing Norgay. Hillary spearheaded the aviation project and initially hoped to construct the airport on even terrain, but local farmers were reluctant to sell their land and he eventually purchased the steeper slope. Sherpas were employed to hack down the vegetation, then Hillary asked locals to flatten the land by performing a traditional foot-stomping dance for 2 days. Today, the airport is a popular option for climbers keen to trek to Everest Base Camp. The terrifying, sloping runway is just 1,729 feet long and can only be attempted by skilled pilots on clear days. There are no radar or navigation devices, which means pilots have to rely on what they can see from the cockpit. Passengers are limited to just a 15 kilograms, 33 pounds, luggage allowance. Despite the remote location, flying in and out of Tenzing Hillary Airport isn't without its creature comforts. Flights come with one member of cabin crew and a drink service, or you can grab a coffee from the fake Starbucks in the nearby town of Lukla. There's a small waiting room with a tea stall, but when the weather is good, passengers tend to soak up the sun on the runway. Paro Airport, Bhutan. Flying into this remote Himalayan airport gives a mind-blowing vista of Mount Everest and the surrounding snow-clad peaks. Some 30,000 travelers fly here each year from Kathmandu, drawn by adventures like the Juk Path Trek. The tiny airstrip makes for a hazardous landing, so much so that only 8 pilots are qualified to undertake the challenge. As well as navigating their way through the jagged peaks up to 18,000 feet high, they also have to deal with savage winds which blow through the valley. The treacherous landing, which involves sweeping within feet of the roofs of local houses, means flights are only permitted in daylight. While airport facilities are minimal, there's a waiting room adorned with paintings of kings past and present. Svalbard Airport, Norway. Svalbard Airport sits on the Svalbard archipelago, a scattering of islands in the Arctic Sea between Norway and the North Pole. The northernmost commercial airport in the world is popular with tourists hoping to explore the untouched wilderness and spot some of the thousands of polar bears living on the islands. Constructing an airport here was a feat of engineering. The runway is built on a layer of permafrost, but the strength of the tarmac depends on how firm the ground underneath is. Fluctuating temperatures meant frequent repaving has been needed since the airport was finished in 1975. However, insulation has now been added under sections of the runway to keep it stable. It may be remote, but Svalbard offers direct flights to Oslo, Tromsø, Zurich, Paris and Hanover. In keeping with the Arctic theme, there's a gigantic stuffed polar bear keeping a watchful eye over the baggage carousel. Stieglers Gorge Airport, the Selous Game Reserve, Tanzania. This miniature airport welcomes passengers arriving to Tanzania's Selous Game Reserve, the largest game reserve in Africa. Unperturbed by the planes, local wildlife often have to be chased off the runway by rangers, and pilots do a flyby before landing, to check no furry friends are lurking in the way. Animals, such as this lion, also often frequent the hut looking for shade. 3 light aircraft land on the scrubby airstrip daily, flying passengers the 45 minutes from Dar es Salaam. While the thatch-covered arrivals hut may look unassuming, passengers quickly find themselves ushered into its shady confines for a glass of champagne, before heading on to Selous Arena Camp. Here, the rough terrain, long distances and frequently flooded roads make flying the ideal way to explore the region. As passengers descend towards the airstrip, they enjoy incredible views over the Rufiji River and, if they're lucky, incredible wildlife below. Friedrichshafen Airport, Bodensee, Germany. This airport in Bodensee, southern Germany, is the birthplace of the Zeppelin. The first hydrogen-filled airship took to the skies here in 1900, after being constructed by Count Ferdinand Zeppelin, and the airport opened for flights in 1915. Today, there's still a Zeppelin hangar at the airport and visitors can take private flights in an airship. Friedrichshafen is now an international airport too, with shops, restaurants and regular flights to Austria, Switzerland and the UK. If you find yourself at a loose end, you can admire work from local artists or visit the Dornier, an aerospace museum next door. Located on the banks of Lake Constance, this airport has one of the most stunning landings in Europe. During their descent, passengers are wowed by glorious views of the alpine foothills and glassy waters. Samui International Airport, Koh Samui, Thailand. The privately owned airport on Koh Samui may be relatively small but it's perfectly formed. Since opening in 1989, tourism on this island has boomed with flights to mainland Thailand, Hong Kong and Singapore. It has been dubbed the most beautiful airport in the world for its elegant design. Inside, there's traditional decor and a laid-back holiday vibe. Tasty pad thai and coconut juice is readily available and there are Thai massages on offer. After landing here, tourists quickly get into the swing of things. Buildings here are made from locally sourced wood and rattan, with thatched roofs and palm tree pillars. You'll find aquariums and pretty gardens with views of the island's lush coconut plantations. Phoenix Airfield, Ross Island, Antarctica. Some 1,000 researchers live at McMurdo Station on Ross Island, which is the main base for the U.S. Antarctic program. Not only is it exceedingly remote, but with temperatures plummeting as low as -50 degrees Celsius, -58 degrees Fahrenheit, in the winter, access can be challenging. The solution: meticulously groomed snow runways. Instead of a tarmac strip, the runway is a lengthy stretch of snow, compacted by heavy rollers to make it almost as hard as concrete. It's strong enough to contend with the weighty, two-wheeled cargo planes that bring supplies. Many of the smaller aircraft used in Antarctica also have retractable ski landing gear to stop them sinking into snowy surfaces. Phoenix Airfield opened in 2016 to replace the nearby Pegasus landing strip. Unlike Phoenix, it was situated on an ice shelf, which meant it moved some 140 feet a year and the condition of the runway would deteriorate during the warmer summer months. Fancy exploring the polar regions? Gustaf 3 Airport, St. Barts, the Caribbean. Only light aircraft carrying up to 20 passengers can land at Gustaf 3 Airport on the Caribbean island of St. Barts, and for good reason. The perilous approach involves swooping down a steep hill, just feet away from traffic and vegetation, before gliding onto a tiny runway less than half a mile long. Pilots have to take special training in order to make the grade here, learning how to pass through the 2 mountains flanking the airport and cope with the often windy conditions. They also need to steadfastly ignore the hordes of tourists who linger below the approach, waving frantically at the planes.